Good day, everyone. This is State Representative Dan Sullivan. I'm here on the Paul Harrell radio program, which is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. I appreciate everybody being here today and look forward to visiting with you. Paul's on vacation for a few weeks, and I know he's going to need that as he gets ready to go down to what he calls the Ivory Palace down in Little Rock for the upcoming fiscal session. I just love this time of year and hope you've had a great holiday. My kids were all home and family was there and we had a great time together. I also hope you had a chance to go catch the 71st Northeast Arkansas basketball tournament. We had a fantastic final with 5 of the 8 teams from my district, District 53. We had the Bay Yellow Jackets against the Riverside Girls, and it was an exciting game with a Riverside hitting a free throw with .6 seconds left, followed by a length of the court pass, and the Bay Yellow Jackets laid it in for the win. The Nettleton girls won, I think, their 3rd consecutive NEA tournament title. The boys from Nettleton won also. Tough loss to the Brooklyn boys. I know they played a great game and really appreciate the way the hard work they had and how they played. You know, the NEA is the grandfather of all holiday tournaments in Arkansas. I was there, I think, just about every day, and the stands were packed. People were excited. Got a chance to visit with a lot of constituents and just see all the joy they had in being with their families and enjoying this time of year. You know, today I'd like to talk with you about a few critical issues that I see that are facing our state. Some will be addressing, some of the issues we'll talk about today will be addressed in the February fiscal session. Some probably in a special session that will most likely be called shortly after the fiscal session. And some of the issues may not hit the floor of the House until 2019. But I still think these are critically important issues. I really hope that people will get involved and engage politically. I see so many folks out at ball games and other civic events. I really hope you'll get involved in your school boards and in your city council meetings. You know, I've traveled to all the city council meetings in my district, been to just about all of the school boards at least once, some of them 2 or 3 times. Really, folks don't see many people from those districts there. And really want to encourage you, maybe you can make a New Year's resolution to at least go to one city council meeting or one school board meeting. You know, it's all about local control. As a legislator, one of my key principles, key values is local control. And to have local control, you have to have local participation. People have to be going to their school boards. You have to be going to your city councils. You have to know the issues and go there and have your input. So let me really encourage you in 2018 to take some time and get involved politically. It's very important. Later on today, I hope we're going to have one of my fellow legislators call in. I hope he's listening now. I know I'm counting on him to call in after the break. I look forward to that. But one of the key issues I hear in talking with constituents, you know, I go to all the parades. I've been to the coffee shops. I travel around and meet with people. Folks, Arkansans want to be free. Let that soak in. Sometimes we don't really put the emphasis and don't understand how important it is and how good it is to live in a free nation, in a free state. I'm a little bit of a transplant from Arkansas. I grew up in the big city of St. Louis and was so fortunate to play basketball there and transferred down here to Arkansas State University. And I remember flying in over Jonesboro and looking down on the country, and I loved to hunt and I loved to fish, and landing here and just falling in love with the state. And one of the things I loved was the individual responsibility and the accountability that people took, not just for themselves, but for their local communities. People take care of each other in Arkansas. They take care of their families. They take care of their friends. And that's one of the things that, you know, I think we have lost a little bit of. We've allowed the government to come in at the federal, state, and local level, and they've kind of injected and inserted and bullied and bought their way into almost every facet of our lives. You know that Arkansas is now one of the most regulated states in the nation. Again, let that sink in. 50 states, we're one of the smallest, yet we are one of the most regulated states in the nation. We're also one of the most highest taxed states in the nation. When you look at our state income tax, our sales tax, all those taxes go in. We're one of the most highly taxed in the nation. You know, by the way, that reminds me, I got a note here from our tax assessor. I know that we had federal legislation that just came up, and it is going to deals with your property taxes and capping that at $10,000 that you can take off. And I've had several constituents call me about that. And this comes from the Association of Arkansas Counties. I think I'll try to get Joe maybe to post this later. I'll try to put it up on my Facebook page. But several people have called me and called our tax collector and assessor about prepaying their property tax. And let me go through this just real quickly. It says, with the new tax passage passed by Congress and signed by President Trump, federal income tax will begin to limit the amount of state and local tax payments that can be deducted to a $10,000 cap beginning in 18. And the question raised by everybody is, can I prepay those taxes, 2018 taxes, can I prepay those before January 1st and not have to be under that same rule? Well, folks, the answer is no. It says the Arkansas law articulates that property tax ad valorem taxes shall be due and payable on and from the first business day in March to and including October 15th. This does not allow a provision for the prepayment of taxes. They say a couple of paragraphs after that and they explain it, but the basic answer is no, you can't go in and prepay your tax. That could have a lot of good policy discussions. I'll leave that for Paul when he comes back. I think most of you are aware that the 2018 fiscal session will come in February, and it appears that the hot topics this year are going to be, of course, taxes, the budget, and health care. Let me just share with you my core belief on taxes, and I've really try to stick closely to what my core beliefs are on any vote that comes up, and it makes it pretty easy to decide how you're going to vote if you can stay with your core belief. You know, my core belief on taxes is that, first of all, it's not a tax cut if the state collects more money the following year. So if we say we're going to cut taxes in 2017, yet at the end of 2017, we spent more money than we did, or collected more money than we did in 2016, we haven't really had a tax cut. That's just a core belief of mine. Another is that we can't have a tax cut if we don't reduce our spending. We have to have spending reductions if we're going to have a tax cut. Now, I know I've learned a little bit since then, and I've kind of understood a little bit more about how the Arkansas tax code works and how the balanced budget works in Arkansas. So there's a strong argument to be made that if the first thing we do is cut taxes, then we will have no choice but to cut spending. That's a really good strategy, and I'm buying in more and more to that. You know, folks tend to spend every dime they bring in. Arkansas is no different. I'm no different. I take that back. I've been able to save quite a bit since I retired recently. But again, if your core principle is to reduce that spending and cut and reduce spending before you raise taxes, and to me that's a core issue that I don't think that we're going to have to address in the legislature with this tax reform task force. Notice I call it task force. I still believe they do a lot of good work there in many of our task forces. But they're addressing that in the forum going on now, and we're talking about ways to address the tax issue. And again, if we don't look and get a handle on our spending, it's going to be really hard to reduce taxes. You know, I don't think this task force is going to come up with any strong suggestions now. They'll come up with those late in 2019 or 2018, and those will come up in 2019 legislative session. Listen, we're getting ready to jump into a break. I'm going to let you go. Hope you'll come back with us on the other side. Again, this is State Representative Dan Sullivan from District 53. When you come back, we're going to talk about some health care issues and maybe Arkansas Works and a few of those. Joe, do we have our special guest? Good, we got our special guest on the line. Representative John Payton has a few words for us. So we're going to go to break and see you on the other side. Thank you. Good afternoon again, everyone. We're so glad to have you back at the Paul Harrell radio program. This is State Representative Dan Sullivan filling in for Paul while he takes a few days off. Again, I appreciate you being here, and I think we have on the line State Representative John Payton. John, are you there?
Yeah, good afternoon, Dan. How you doing today?
Well, listen, I appreciate you joining me and helping bail me out here a little bit.
Well, I think it's great that you got to host the radio program today. I came to work this morning, had no idea what you were up to, and I've got a real job, and found a newspaper clipping laying on my desk. One of my employees had left it there, and it's a newspaper clipping from the Jonesboro Sun, letter to the editor by Senator John Cooper, who I like and who I supported in his first run to be senator. But anyway, so I texted you a picture of it and to see if you were aware of it, and you invited me to be on the radio show. So
yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm very aware of it, and that
opportunistic.
was going to make that a part of the radio show today. When it comes to the health care debate and funding, John, the liberals and many of the Democrats have always come with this throw granny off the cliff style. And, it's really surprising to me that we have Republicans turning to that tactic. You'll notice in that article, which was in the Jonesboro Sun, I think, a week or so ago, that's kind of the tactic or the strategy this article took, is that we fellow Republicans are going to be throwing granny off the cliff. Again, it's not a new tactic, but it's a new tactic that I'm hearing Republicans use against fellow Republicans. And John, I know you and I know those of us that have not supported Arkansas Works or the private option or Obamacare in any form or fashion. We all support taking care of the people that are most needy. In fact, what Arkansas Works has done and Obamacare has done is pull money away from the people that are most needy and use state tax dollars and federal tax dollars to pay for people's insurance who are healthy, young, working, able-bodied parents without kids. But John, you brought up another point to me. You talked about this point that Senator Cooper makes in the article that those of us on the right wing, I didn't know I was a right-winger, but now I guess I am now, labeled wear that label proudly. But you brought up a constitutional issue to me that I thought I agree with and really appreciate your ability to articulate that. Go ahead.
Well, when I read the article, I was concerned about a couple of things, but there's the health care debate and, what's right or wrong and how we balance that with our responsibility to the tax-paying citizens versus the needy citizens. And we've had, I got elected, I started my first term in 2013 when the private option was the big deal, and we had that fight. But, all that concerns me, and of course the 80,000 that they're now removing from the rolls that we find out have been fraudulently on the rolls for the last 4 years. But what bothers me more is the thing that seems to infect a lot of legislators' thinking, in that everything should be decided by a simple majority. The Arkansas Constitution, has a provision that if we're going to spend the taxpayers' money, that we have to have a supermajority in agreement on how to spend that money. And that's not something that we as legislators have the power to change. I mean, that's a vote of the people. It would take a constitutional amendment to change that. But they have found a way around it. And what I read in this letter to the editor is that Senator Cooper seems to support getting around the supermajority. Anything that we do down there is policy. And, of course, to pass a bill and to change a law that does not affect money, it just takes a simple majority. And he seems to make the argument in his letter to the editor that, if you're in a minority, which would be 49 or less, that you should not be dictating anything that has to do with policy, and he seems to make the leap that would include the funding. And so the misconception that so many people have is that we have to defund an entire agency or shut down government because we're having an argument over a particular policy. But that decision is made by the simple majority to tie the controversial issue to the entire budget, so that instead of just voting on one particular issue, that the minority who are trying to make sure it takes a supermajority to pass the funding, they have no choice but to vote on an entire budget or an entire agency's budget. We were promised in 2013, when the private option was coming through, that they would separate it from the DHS budget and that we'd have a separate vote on it. And they actually got a few people to vote for the policy by promising them that they'd have the opportunity to vote against the funding, the appropriation. And so I've witnessed that. I've been there now for 5 years, and it's just disingenuous to try to argue that we should back everything down to a simple majority when the Arkansas Constitution, which we do not have the power as legislators to change, calls for a supermajority when you're spending the taxpayers' money. If we have an item that we can't agree on, there's no reason to shut down an agency or to shut down the government. That decision's made by the majority that are not willing to get the extra votes it takes to spend money.
John, we kind of face this same issue with the veterans tax and the veterans tax cut. When it was coupled with a tax increase, and we couldn't separate those, weren't allowed to separate those, and many of us wanted to separate them because many of us favored a tax cut for the veterans, but we didn't favor a tax increase on the other side of that. But we weren't allowed to separate the two. They were pushed together, and we were forced to vote up or down on that. I don't remember how you voted on it, but I just didn't vote for it. I don't like the tactic. I don't like the style. And it seems like we're in the same position right now, again, that we disagree on Obamacare going forward, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, or I'm going to on the show as the show progresses. But we're being forced into a corner, and it looks like Senator Cooper and others are trying to set the narrative that those of us who oppose Obamacare want to shut down DHS, and it's just not the case.
Well, the Constitution of Arkansas says that if you have 25 members in the House, that would be 25%, who agree that something should not be spent, we should not be spending our money on something like this, that the Arkansas Constitution says that we should put the brakes on and that we should come up with a policy that enough people can agree on to fund it. And but what they've done, and this is not just a private option thing. Like you said, it could be the veterans tax cut and other things. But what they've done is they've found that we can't void what's in the Constitution, but we can avoid it by making these arguments. And so if you have 51 votes, you can pass a law and you can pass a policy that dictates that we're going to spend money. But the same 51 votes will also keep you from separating that item out from the agency budget or from the state budget when we vote on the whole budget together. And it's sad that they're using this tactic, because every dollar that we spend that's hard-earned by the taxpayers of Arkansas, it should require the supermajority that our Constitution intends for it to.
John, I appreciate you coming on. We're getting ready to go to a hard break. Thank you for your wisdom. I appreciate your friendship, the knowledge that you have of the Arkansas Constitution, Arkansas law, and the knowledge you have of the people of Arkansas. Maybe we can get some language in this funding that will limit. I think Josh Miller had a bill trying to limit enrollment or cap enrollment. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to bring that up and we can get that moved through. Thanks again, Representative Payton, and we'll see everybody back on the other side.
Stuck in a state of...
Good afternoon again. Again, Representative Dan Sullivan, District 53, filling in on the Paul Harrell radio program, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Really appreciate Representative Payton coming on. You know, folks, if you drive around Northeast Arkansas, you may see I got a few billboards up there, and the billboards say, "From God to us, life and liberty." From God to us, life and liberty. I believe that. I believe it strongly, and most Arkansans that I visit with believe that also. And what does that liberty mean? And what does it mean to from God to us, life and liberty? It means that you are responsible and you are accountable for your actions, and that government takes care, that you don't need government to step in and take care of every facet of your life. And that's kind of what we've gotten into in the healthcare debate, is how big does government need to be? How intrusive should government be in healthcare? That's exactly what's happened with Obamacare, with Arkansas, or the private option in Arkansas Works. You know, I think when you go down to the Marble Palace, as Paul calls it, I'll call it the house because I'm proud to be there. You know, and you hear people talk behind the scenes, and you hear legislators just talk candidly about things. You know, most legislators would agree that the private option, Obamacare, and Arkansas Works was more about money than it was health care. It was more about money than it was health care. What I mean by that, before I became a state legislator, I was in business. Many of you know that. And the previous administration, the BB administration, wanted to cut or bend the cost curve, they called it, on Medicare. And I met with the deputy director of DHS, and they said, well, we got to bend the cost curve 5% or 10%. And a whole group of us that provided health care for children and adults in Medicare and Medicaid, we sat down, we said, we'd be glad to do that. We can help you cut at least 5%. We can probably cut 10%. You know, they never got back to us on that. And it really seemed quite strange to me. When that was their stated goal, we sat down around the table, offered to help them do that, and they refused, or declined at least. Well, a few months after that, I got back with the deputy director and asked again, you know, what we needed to do and how we could move forward together. And the deputy director said, I don't know why you oppose this program. Your company and your people will make more money under the new program. And I looked at her and thought, now, how can that be? I thought you just told me that you wanted to cut 5 or 10%. Now you're telling me if we will go with your program, we'll actually make more. Well, it became obvious then that the state didn't, it would be nice if we could bend the cost curve to Medicaid spending, and we have, and we needed to, and we have cut it significantly. But what the state was really after was federal money. We wanted the millions and billions of dollars that would come into the state if we went to the federal program, one of which was Obamacare, then the private option, now Arkansas Works. You know, several years ago, that is the situation that I found myself in, and I find myself back there today. You know, there are many of our legislators will tell you they voted for private option and Arkansas Works because Arkansas wanted the money, and if we didn't take it, the money would go to other states. Well, that was just not a true claim. That was not accurate, but it was really a good line to put out there. We were made a lot of promises along the way. Look, if we'll go down this path, we're going to increase competition, cost will go down, we're going to limit enrollment to 250,000, people will get into work, we'll have co-pays. All these wonderful scenarios were laid out if we would just walk down that road, plus we'll get all this federal money. Well, those of us that did not buy into that, and I've not voted for Arkansas Works either time it's come up before me, will not vote for it again unless it moves in the other direction of actually reducing that. But, you know, again, the state wanted the money to come in there. Those of us that opposed it said, you know, that's a false promise. At some point, the bill will come due, and we're going to take in the money, and when the bill comes due, we won't be able to afford it. Well, guess what? That day is here. And now as we are moving from a 5% Arkansas cost of the total, which is, folks, $500 plus a month, and those 80,000 people that you probably read about recently that were cut from the rolls, we've been paying $500 a month for 80,000 healthy, working-age, able-bodied adults, to the detriment of people that we have in Arkansas who have a significant need. You know, I know I'm chasing a rabbit here, but I met with a gentleman the other day who works with the PACE program here in Jonesboro. They have about 200 people, many of them wheelchair-bound, elderly, I think 55 and older, with significant health care problems. They have no fax machine in their office. They don't get mail in their office. They don't have computers that are up to date. But yet we're paying for people, again, able-bodied, healthy, working-age adults. We'll spend $500 a month on them. You know, it's time that we take a serious look at this. You know, we applied for waivers. I think last year we passed a bill that allowed the governor to ask the feds for a waiver that would give us work requirements, reduce enrollment by 60,000, do some means testing for people. I'm sure you heard about the people that had $1 million house or a $500,000 house in North Carolina on Arkansas Works. We're going to do some means testing. We were going to have a copay where people would pay $13 a month, I think, which, again, that hasn't worked either. I think we're about $8 million in the hole by people not paying that. Reducing to 60,000 won't hardly get us back to the original promise of 250,000. And I'm curious as to why we no longer hear about Arkansas Works creating a competitive environment for insurance companies. You know, Blue Cross Blue Shield owns 70% plus of the market. Hardly a competitive market, more of a monopoly in the state of Arkansas than anything. When you look at all those waiver requests that we've made, that were made back, I think in May or maybe in April, they've not occurred. We haven't achieved those. Why would we continue to wait and ask for those? You know, at the federal level, and all of our federal legislators passed this and voted for it. At the federal level, we removed the individual part of the individual option of the Obamacare, which was one of the primary legs of Obamacare. And our president and others have said their goal is to eliminate Obamacare. If that's true, why are we continuing to go down this path of expansion, wasted money, promises unkept, and maybe they're unkept not because anybody wants to defraud someone or lie, they're just not being met, and we're not reaching those goals. And folks, there are options. Again, I mentioned Representative Miller introduced a bill last session just to cap the enrollment. And as people dropped off the rolls, we don't enroll new people. There are lots of options out there. And of course, these people would then go on the federal Obamacare and just get them off the Arkansas rolls. But there are options out there besides us right-wingers just trying to throw Granny over the cliff. Folks, I know a lot of you out there. I've worked with you in church. I've taught your kids in school. I've sat down with you at the coffee shop. I think most of you know me. You know that I have a heart for the people of our state that are in need. I have a heart for the people who need our help, who need the state and our local churches and people to step up. Folks, we can do that. We don't need the federal government jumping in here on us, telling us what we need to do, telling us how we need to operate. We need to exercise some of these options ourselves. I've got just a few more things we're going to go through when we come back from break, but we're going to run to break again for a few minutes. I really, again, appreciate you being with me here. This is Dan Sullivan on the Paul Harrell radio program, and we'll be right back. Back again, this is State Representative Dan Sullivan on the Paul Harrell radio program. We appreciate you staying tuned. Let me kind of close the loop on this with an old adage that says when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is stop digging. When we have to ask for a waiver for work requirements, when we have to try to reduce the enrollment by changing the requirements from 138 to 100% of the poverty level, when we have to ask businesses to start picking up and join the Arkansas Works, when we have to start means testing and asking for income requirements, when we have to start asking for co-pays, when we have essentially created a monopoly in the insurance agency and the insurance market, it seems like we would have to admit, yeah, we're in a hole. And let's stop digging. I guess the other one, that the old adage is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Senator Cooper's article he doesn't get at the heart of Arkansas Works, but it seems like he's admitting that the Arkansas Works is in a hole, but he says, let's not fix it. And those of you that do try to fix it, you are radical right-wingers. And again, proud to be one, and look forward to having this debate in the House as the budget comes up. Paul's really good about talking about some of the behind-the-scenes issues that are important from that side of it. One of the important issues coming up, you're not going to hear a lot about, except maybe on Paul's show, is when the House picks a new speaker. We'll be picking a new speaker designate after the fiscal session. We'll go into private session, closed session. We'll have 2 or 3 or 4 candidates who want to be the new speaker, and we'll have an election at that time. The formal election and the official election of the speaker doesn't happen until we go back into session in 2018. But this informal election allows us to get a speaker in place so that they can get ready for a job. And folks, it's a huge job, and the folks that take on that responsibility just do a tremendous service for the state of Arkansas. They spend a lot of hours, a lot of time away from their families. They get a lot of grief from a lot of us and others for the way things that are done. But it's a critically important job, and one that requires just a lot of diligence, time, patience, and effort. When we elect the speaker, right now the speaker gets to appoint the chair, the co-chair, and committee members to select committees. Folks, we really need to change that. I'm unfortunately one of the ones that voted to allow that, although it wasn't, again, it's not a final vote. The final vote doesn't come until 18, and I've already had discussions, as I know several other House members have, about the process and the candidates for the speaker. Are they willing to allow us to pick those positions by seniority? Our state Senate does that. Seems to work out pretty well for them. But in the House, the way it stands now, our speaker is going to appoint those people. Well, folks, let me tell you, the people from District 53, I'm on the Agri Committee, and my family, my wife's side are farmers. They farm over in Monette and in that region, been farmers for generations. I was raised in St. Louis, Missouri. I never got close to a garden, much less a farm. But, I understand the importance, and I'm their representative for District 53. And we have farmers all over our district who are very willing to give me good advice, sound advice, just as they did on the dicamba issue. And I heard from farmers on both sides of that issue, went down to committee meetings, traveled around the state with the plant board and listened to those folks and found out what's important to those issues. As a representative, my job is to represent the people of my district. And if the people of my district want me on the Agri Committee, that's my responsibility. It shouldn't be left up to the Speaker of the House to put me where he thinks I might best be suited, or where they think I might do the least harm, whichever one comes first. But folks, that just isn't the right way to do it. We need to let these positions and committees be picked based upon seniority. Put them where the people that you represent, where they want you to be. I really hope you'll call your local representative and really encourage them to vote for a speaker that will allow us House members to pick our positions on seniority. Again, that's just critically important. It's a little bit of inside baseball. You'll probably hear a little bit more about that from Paul as that comes up. But again, let me encourage you to do that and take the time. Just another important issue that I think will hopefully come up in the special session. If you've been watching and listening to Paul's show, you've heard a lot about the Enhanced Carry Act 562. Folks, that's another bad vote on my part. I freely admit it. Good intentions, as many of us did, but as what often happens when things get rushed through, what turned out to be a very simple bill by Senator Linda Collins Smith and others to allow professors in our colleges and universities to have, if they have a concealed carry license, to concealed carry on Arkansas State University campus. Well, that bill got pulled and pushed and tugged, and again, Paul's talked about it in many different ways, but I really hope that we'll revisit that in a special session. Again, it's up to the governor first to call the session, and he'll have his issues that he puts on the table there. And I really hope that will be one. We need to come back and look at that. I met yesterday with a couple of concealed carry instructors. One of them said it's just a mess, and that he knows a lot of concealed carry instructors who are just not going to reapply. First of all, one of the reasons he said now that Trump is the president, not as many people see the need to carry a gun. I think that's I kind of got a good kick out of that. He said under the Obama administration, he had classes of 48 and 50. And now he's got Trump in office and classes are 14 and 15. And he said, but once we go to this enhanced carry, a lot of people aren't going to, instructors won't go back and go through the training, the additional expense for the little bit of money they make on it. The other side of it, I guess, is he said that if they do split it down where you can teach both of them, you can teach enhanced carry and you can teach concealed carry, which I would support and hope we can have a vote to do that and allow instructors to have their choice, do one or both. He said it's not going to be worth taking the time to do that for the people, and he will just price it out of people's reach. Now, folks, these are instructors. These are the people that we rely on to keep us safe, to teach the courses properly. They're going to just price people out of doing that because it's not worth their time to do that. It's what's called a free market. And when we put restrictions on the free market, when we talk about enhanced carry and all the different things, we're just pricing ourselves right out of our Second Amendment right. You know, I'm a constitutional carry person. I've mentioned that several times. I think the Constitution is very clear that our Second Amendment shall not be abridged. Now, I'm certainly willing to talk to people and have a discussion and pass something that will move the ball in the right direction. But again, I think we made an error with this enhanced carry legislation. I hope that we'll come back in the next session in some kind of a special session and address that. And before we go here, we're getting ready to go to break. I just got a couple of minutes, but I want to bring up this issue at Arkansas State University on the campus with First Amendment. You know, Arkansas State, I want to brag on them a little bit before I get into anything else, but you know, Arkansas State allows many of our religious organizations, our churches, to have facilities on campus. We have a Baptist Student Union, a Church of Christ, a Catholic, a Methodist, all those and others, all on our campus. And I applaud Arkansas State University for stepping out and being courageous in the responsibility and our constitutional right to exercise the freedom of religion. They've done a great job on that. As far as this lawsuit goes, if you're familiar with what happened, a group called Turning Point USA and an ASU student, Ashlyn Hoggard, allegedly violated ASU policy when they set up an informational table. And ASU officials came in, shut them down, and I think they may have banned Turning Point USA from campus. Not sure about that. But anyway, a group called the Alliance Defending Freedom stepped in to defend Ashlyn and the Turning Point USA. And these Alliance Defending Freedom, these are big time folks. If you're familiar with James Dobson, James Kennedy, some of these great faith leaders in our nation were the people behind this alliance group. Well, the Alliance Defending Freedom has now stepped in. They picked up the case. They filed suit against ASU. And again, I'll brag on ASU a little bit. You know, I got a call the very next morning from ASU officials, and they assured me that they took this seriously. They value freedom of speech. And again, I know the administration, know them well. I've worked with them on a number of projects. I value them making that comment to me. I've talked with, again, several of the top officials there, and I'm confident that ASU will step forward and protect our First Amendment rights on campus, and look forward to addressing this in the coming year, and hopefully you'll be hearing more about this. You know, but I can't, again, help but tie this to our Second Amendment right. You know, what ASU was charged with or sued over was having certain zones where one had to be within that zone within a certain time frame, a scheduled time frame, in order to exercise their First Amendment right. And they're being sued over that. As a matter of fact, I heard somebody in the paper the other day called that a right-wing position to sue for your First Amendment right. Again, I'm proud to be a right-winger. I'm proud to be on this side of it when we are defending our First Amendment. And I feel the same way about our Second Amendment right. Why is it that our colleges are going to be given under this enhanced carry law? All our colleges and universities have to do is write a special policy, and they can opt out. Well, how is it an organization can opt me out of my Second Amendment right? It just doesn't seem right. And again, I think those two issues are closely tied, and I hope we'll get together in a special session and go to these. Well, let me look through my notes here. You know, I never thought I would see my face on a billboard. And now I got billboards around town. I never thought I would host a radio program, and here I am behind a mic hosting a radio program. And folks, it's a lot of work. I retired just a few days ago. The ink is not even dry on my resignation, and here I am with a full-time job today. But I have really enjoyed it. I hope to see you on the other side, and again, appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. Thank you.